before we meet our main character, we actually begin somewhere else entirely. We open on a desert landscape that's absolutely brutal, scorching heat, endless sand, and something that immediately catches our attention. Teenage boys are digging massive holes in the ground. These aren't small holes, these are serious excavations. And they're being watched by armed guards who stand in the shade while the kids suffer under the unforgiving sun. Then we see something shocking. One of the boys spots a venomous rattlesnake nearby, and instead of panicking, he seems to accept his fate. He's completely done, exhausted beyond belief. He removes his shoes and walks toward the danger while the other boys watch helplessly. This opening scene is absolutely haunting because it raises immediate questions. Where are we? What is this place, and why are these kids being forced to do this? We then cut to a completely different scene, a city. A teenage boy named Stanley Yelnats is walking home from school, completely oblivious to the chaos that's about to enter his life. He's just a regular kid, maybe a bit overweight, definitely not the most popular guy at school. He's minding his own business, thinking about his day, when something absolutely insane happens. A pair of dirty, worn-out sneakers literally falls from the sky and lands directly on him. Now, this might sound ridiculous, but here's the thing. These aren't just any sneakers. They belong to Clyde Livingston, one of the most famous baseball players in the country, and these shoes are so famous that they were being auctioned off for charity. The price tag? Massive. Stanley recognizes the shoes immediately. So instead of being smart about it and, turning them in to the authorities or something reasonable, he decides to take them home. Here's why. His father has been working for years, literally years, trying to invent a cure for foot odor. He's failed repeatedly, spent countless nights in their apartment, experimenting with different formulas, and their family is basically broke because of it. But what if these famous shoes could provide some kind of clue? What if they could help Zed's research? It seems like a small decision in the moment, a kid picking up some shoes, but this single choice is about to destroy his life. Before Stanley can even explain where the shoes came from, police officers surround the apartment building. They swarm in, and Stanley is immediately placed under arrest. His mother watches in horror as her son is taken away. The police are convinced he stole them from the charity auction. They don't believe him when he says they fell from the sky. I mean, seriously, who would? The situation gets worse when they search the apartment. Stanley's father's failed experiments are everywhere. There are shoes scattered throughout the place, piles of them, because the old man has been using them for his foot odor research. To the police, it looks like Stanley is running some kind of stolen shoe operation with his family. It's the worst possible optics. In court, the judge gives Stanley an ultimatum that will change everything. He can either go to jail, or he can spend 18 months at Camp Green Lake. The judge presents it like it's some kind of rehabilitation program, a chance for Stanley to build character and learn from his mistakes. Stanley, thinking a camp can't be worse than prison, makes what he believes is the smart choice. He picks Camp Green Lake. On the bus ride across an increasingly desolate desert landscape, Stanley has plenty of time to think. His mind drifts to something his family has believed in for generations. A curse. According to his grandfather's stories, the entire Yelnats family is cursed with terrible luck because of something his great-great-grandfather did centuries ago. He broke a promise. He failed someone when he mattered most. Stanley remembers the story. His ancestor, a man named Elia Yelnats, fell in love with a girl named Myra Menk, but another man also wanted to marry her. Desperate, Elia visited a fortune teller, a mysterious woman named Madame Zeroni. She gave him a piglet and told him to carry it up a mountain every single day while singing a special song to it. As the pig grew stronger and heavier, Elia would grow stronger too. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. After he finished, he had to carry Madame Zeroni herself up that same mountain and sing the same song. If he didn't do it, the entire family would be cursed forever. As the bus continues through the desert, Stanley thinks he sees something strange, a man riding beside a mule in the distance. But it disappears before he can get a good look. The bus finally arrives, and Stanley's heart immediately sinks. There's no lake, none. The entire area is a wasteland, dry, dead, filled with holes that extend as far as the eye can see. It's not a summer camp, it's a prison disguised as a rehabilitation facility. This is where things get real. A supervisor named Mr. Sir greets Stanley and explains the rules of this place. There are no fences. There are no guard towers. Why? because the desert itself is the prison, the heat is the guard, the endless sand is the walls. If you try to run, you'll die from dehydration before you get anywhere, mister. Sir doesn't say this to scare Stanley, he says it as a simple fact. He's seen kids try to escape, he's never seen them come back. Then he hands Stanley 2 sets of clothes, a hat, and a shovel. The job is straightforward. Every single day, each boy must dig one hole that is exactly 5 feet deep and 5 feet wide. The faster you finish, the faster you get out of the sun. And oh, by the way, there are rattlesnakes and yellow-spotted lizards everywhere. If you bother them, they'll kill you. A counselor named Dr. Pendansky shows Stanley around, pretending to be friendly and supportive. He explains that the boys are here to build character through hard work. Then he warns Stanley never, ever to bother the warden, the mysterious woman who runs this entire operation. Pendansky says this with a kind of fear in his voice that makes it clear she's not someone to mess with. Stanley is taken to his tent, and here's where he meets the other prisoners. But they don't use real names here. Everyone goes by nicknames. There's X-Ray, Armpit, Squid, Zigzag, Magnet, and a kid who barely speaks at all, Zero. Using someone's real name is considered disrespectful in this place. It's a violation of the camp's unwritten code. The boys immediately start testing Stanley, pushing him to see how weak he is. At dinner, X-Ray literally steals food off Stanley's plate and explains that new kids don't deserve full meals because they haven't dug any holes yet. The food itself is terrible. Basically the same thing served different ways every day. It's barely edible. But here's where things get interesting. When Stanley mentions why he was sent to Camp Green Lake, when he talks about the Clyde Livingston shoes, Zero suddenly asks a question that shocks everyone. He asks if the shoes had red X's on them. And here's the thing, Zero almost never speaks, but he knows about these shoes. Why? How? The question hangs in the air unanswered. That night, Stanley can barely sleep. He's listening to the sounds of the camp, the wind, distant animals, the general misery of imprisoned children. His mind keeps returning to the family curse story. He thinks more deeply about Elia Yelnats and what happened. The story goes like this. Elia did what Madame Zeroni instructed. He carried the pig up the mountain every day, sang to it, and grew stronger. Eventually, the pig was large enough to compete with the pig offered by his rival for Myra's hand. But Myra couldn't choose between them. She treated the entire marriage decision like a game, a joke. Frustrated and humiliated, Elia gave up. He decided to leave for America instead. He got angry. He forgot about his promise. He never went back to carry Madame Zeroni up that mountain, and from that moment on, the Yelnats family was cursed. The next morning, Stanley experiences his first full day at Camp Green Lake. It's absolutely brutal. The sun beats down relentlessly. Dirt constantly falls back into his hole as he digs. His hands develop painful blisters almost immediately. The other boys laugh at him every time he complains or asks for help. The exhaustion is unbearable. His body is screaming. But he keeps digging because what choice does he have? As he digs, Stanley continues thinking about Elia and his story. The deeper he digs in the desert, the deeper he goes into his family's history. It's like 2 stories running parallel to each other. Eventually, just before sunset, Stanley finally finishes his hole. He's barely able to stand. He's absolutely wrecked. But when he tries to climb out, nobody helps him. The other boys just watch as he struggles to pull himself up from the pit. He has to do it alone. That evening, as he walks back toward camp, something terrifying happens. A yellow-spotted lizard appears nearby. These lizards are deadly. One bite and you're done. Before it can strike, Mr. Sir appears and shoots at it, barely missing Stanley in the process, before finally killing the creature. For the first time, Stanley truly understands. This place is dangerous. This place can actually kill you. Days blur together at Camp Green Lake. Wake up before sunrise, eat terrible food, dig holes all day under the merciless heat, come back exhausted, try to sleep. Repeat. Stanley's hands become covered in blisters. His body aches constantly. Sometimes the showers don't work. The food barely changes. Dangerous animals wander through the camp without warning. But slowly, Stanley adapts. He starts to understand the rhythms of this place. He learns to survive. The other boys continue to make fun of him because he's slower than everyone else. But eventually, they stop paying as much attention to him. He becomes invisible, which is actually a good thing in a place like this. One afternoon while digging, Stanley discovers something unusual underground, a fossil. He brings it to Dr. Pendansky thinking maybe this is valuable. Maybe this will impress someone, but Pendanski immediately shuts it down. The warden isn't interested in fossils. Then Pendanski explains something interesting. There used to be an actual lake here many years ago. The entire area dried up. All this land once belonged to the warden's grandfather. This revelation opens up a flashback to the past. We're transported back in time to when Green Lake was actually green and alive. There are schools, shops, trees, water everywhere. The town is thriving. A man named Sam is a regular visitor to the town. He arrives with a donkey cart selling onions, not just any onions, but onions he claims can cure almost anything. Sam is friendly with everyone. He's warm, he's kind. He's different from the other men in town. But there's someone who captures his attention. Catherine Barlow, the local school teacher. Whenever Sam visits the school, he brings her fresh onions. She gives him jars of peaches in return. Over time, this exchange becomes more than just a transaction. They become close. They fall in love. The relationship is genuine and beautiful, but this bothers the men in town. Many of them also admire Catherine. They're jealous of Sam's connection with her. And then there's Charles Walker, a wealthy man who keeps trying to impress Catherine with his money and status. She repeatedly rejects him. She tells him no, and Charles Walker is not used to hearing the word no. Back at Camp Green Lake in the present day, something important happens to Stanley. He's involved in a minor incident where he accidentally falls on another boy named Zigzag during an argument. A fight almost breaks out, but it gets stopped before things escalate. But here's the thing. After this incident, the boys officially give Stanley a nickname, Caveman. Nobody messes with the caveman. For the first time since arriving, Stanley feels like he's part of the group. He's earned a level of respect. Not long after this, Stanley receives a letter from home. His father's experiments are still failing. The family's financial situation is getting worse. His mom is worried. His dad is depressed. Everything is falling apart back home. But at the same time, something unexpected happens. Zero, the quiet kid who barely speaks, approaches Stanley and asks him to teach him how to read. Zero never learned properly. He wants to learn. Stanley refuses at first. He's too tired. After digging all day, he just wants to rest and forget about his misery. He doesn't have energy to teach anyone anything. Then, during another day of digging, Stanley uncovers something that changes everything. His shovel hits something solid. He digs more carefully and pulls out a small golden tube. It's engraved with the initials KB. The boys gather around, examining it closely. What is this? Where did it come from? What does it mean? Before Stanley can properly process what he's found, X-Ray quickly takes it. He tells Stanley to let him turn it in to the authorities. "I'll take care of this," he says. "Trust me." Later, when Pendanski sees the tube, he contacts the warden immediately, and then something shocking happens. The warden arrives, and she's not what anyone expected. She's not an old, harsh woman. She's young, she's attractive. But the moment she sees that golden tube, her entire demeanor changes. She becomes obsessed. She orders all the boys to dig around the exact area where it was found. The camp's secret is revealed. They've been searching for something underground this entire time. The digging isn't about character building. It's a treasure. For several days, the boys dig the same massive area together. They find almost nothing except one small metal piece. Eventually, the warden loses interest and orders everyone to go back to digging separate holes. But something is clearly going on here. The warden wants something. Something that's been buried in this desert for a long time. Shortly after the massive digging project ends, one of the boys makes a critical mistake. He steals a bag of sunflower seeds from Mr. Sir's truck while Mr. Sir is filling their water containers. After Mr. Sir leaves, the boys pass the seeds around, savoring this rare treat. But then their hearts sink. The truck is coming back, Mr. Sir noticed the seeds were missing. The boys panic. They try to hide the seeds, but some accidentally spill near Stanley's hole. When Mr. Sir arrives and sees the evidence, it looks like Stanley stole them. Stanley, being the decent person that he is, takes the blame to protect the other boys. He didn't steal them. He had nothing to do with it. But he takes the punishment anyway. Mr. Sir drags Stanley to the warden's cabin. In the cabin, Stanley notices something disturbing. The walls are covered with posters and newspaper articles about an outlaw named Kissin Kate Barlow. There are wanted posters. There are old photos. The warden is obsessed with this person. Then the warden does something that's both fascinating and terrifying. She shows Stanley her fingernails. They're painted with a dark, shimmering polish. She explains that it's made from rattlesnake venom. Then, when Mr. Sir interrupts her, she suddenly scratches his face deeply across both cheeks with those venomous nails. The scratches are deep and painful. Mr. Sir yelps in pain. But the warden isn't even concerned about Stanley at that point. She's annoyed that he was brought there over something as trivial as sunflower seeds. She sends him back to work. Stanley survives the meeting with the warden. When he returns to the digging site, the other boys are shocked. They thought he might not come back. But here's the beautiful part. Zero has finished Stanley's hole for him as a thank you for taking the blame. Because of this act of kindness, Stanley finally agrees to teach Zero how to read. The next day, Mr. Sir still has fresh, painful scars on his face from the warden's nails. He's angry about what happened. He's so angry that he refuses to fill Stanley's water container properly. He gives Stanley less water than everyone else. It's a small act of revenge, but in the desert heat, water is everything. But Stanley doesn't let this stop him from teaching Zero to read. Every evening after work, Stanley helps Zero sound out words. They practice writing letters in the dirt. Zero, in return, secretly helps Stanley dig part of his holes during the day. Since Zero is the fastest digger at the camp, Stanley's workload becomes much easier. As they time together, another flashback reveals more of Catherine Barlow's story. After Sam was killed by the townspeople for being in a relationship with Catherine, Green Lake began to dry up. It's like nature itself was punishing the town for what they did. The water disappeared. The life drained away. Catherine eventually returned to the town as a different person. She was transformed by grief and rage. She shot the sheriff, kissed him as he died, and became the outlaw known as Kissin' Kate Barlow. Over time, Kate robbed many wealthy travelers passing through the desert. One of those victims was Stanley's great-grandfather, Stanley Yelnatsai. She stole his treasure chest and left him stranded in the desert to die. Back in the present, Stanley begins to piece things together. The golden tube he found earlier, it belonged to Kissin' Kate Barlow. The initials KB make sense now. And if Kate Barlow's lipstick tube was buried near that hole, then maybe, just maybe, her treasure chest is still out there. The warden's obsession suddenly makes complete sense. She's not just looking for anything. She's looking for Kate Barlow's treasure. As Stanley and Zero continue their secret lessons, they slowly become genuine friends. Zero finally reveals his real name, Hector Zeroni. Stanley is absolutely shocked by this revelation, Zeroni. The same last name as Madame Zeroni, the fortune teller connected to his family's curse. Could this be a coincidence? Or is it something more? Zero explains his past. His mother disappeared years earlier. Since then, he's been living alone on the streets, surviving however he could. He's nobody. He has no family. He has no home. But now he has Stanley, and that changes everything. Meanwhile, the other boys start noticing that Stanley is receiving help from Zero. They see that Stanley's workload is easier because Zero is secretly helping him dig. And they're jealous. One afternoon, the tension explodes. Zigzag starts attacking Stanley in the middle of the desert. Dr. Pendansky is right there watching. But he doesn't stop the fight, he just lets it happen. Stanley gets overpowered. He's slammed into the dirt repeatedly. He's getting beaten down. Then Zero snaps. For the first time in the movie, Zero completely loses control. He grabs a shovel and smashes it directly across Pendansky's face. The counselor collapses to the ground bleeding. Zero sprints away into the desert before anyone can stop him. Everyone freezes in shock. Mr. Sir wants to chase after Zero immediately, but the warden stops him, and what she says is absolutely chilling. She explains that Zero has no family. He has no real records. Nobody truly cares about him. And with complete calm, with complete indifference, she orders his files to be destroyed. She tells them to erase him from existence. He was nobody, she says. He'll stay nobody. That night, the boys talk about how impossible it is to survive alone in the desert without water. But Stanley can't stop thinking about Zero. He remembers another family story about his great-grandfather surviving for over 2 weeks in the desert after Kate Barlow robbed him. Somehow, he found refuge at a mysterious place called God's Thumb. The next morning, a new boy arrives to replace Zero, as if Zero never mattered, as if he never existed. Stanley realizes the truth. Nobody else is going to help him. Nobody else is going to help Zero. If Zero is going to survive, Stanley has to find him. While Mr. Sir is distracted filling water containers, Stanley makes his move. He steals the truck, Mr. Sir jumps onto the side of the vehicle trying to stop him, but Stanley loses control and crashes the truck into one of the holes. Without wasting a single second, Stanley jumps out and runs into the desert on foot. The other boys watch him disappear into the distance. When the warden hears what happened, she gives Mr. Sir an order that's absolutely ruthless. Wait 2 weeks before reporting Stanley missing. By then, there will be nothing left to find. The desert will have taken care of the problem. Under the brutal desert heat, Stanley wanders across the barren landscape. He dodges rattlesnakes. He avoids yellow-spotted lizards. He's pushing his body to the absolute limit. Then he discovers something that saves his life. An old, broken-down boat sitting in the middle of the desert, and hiding underneath it is Zero. Zero is weak. He's exhausted. He's barely able to stand. But he's alive. He explains how he survived. He found old jars of peaches buried nearby. These peaches belonged to Sam and Catherine many years earlier. They've turned into spoiled jam after decades underground, but it's food, it's water. It kept him alive. As Stanley and Zero rest together, Stanley notices something in the distance, a giant mountain formation shaped like a thumb. He immediately realizes what it is, God's thumb, the place where his ancestors survived years earlier. The boys decide to travel there, hoping they can find fresh water. The climb becomes increasingly difficult. The heat drains their strength. At one point, Stanley almost falls off the mountain, but Zero grabs him and pulls him back up using a shovel. But Zero is weakening. His body is giving up. The dehydration and hunger have taken their toll. He suddenly collapses and loses consciousness. Stanley has a choice to make: leave him behind or carry him. He chooses to carry him. Stanley lifts Zero onto his back and continues climbing the mountain alone. Step by step, his legs are shaking, his muscles are screaming, but he keeps going. He doesn't give up. He carries Zero up the rocky terrain until he finally reaches the top. At the summit, Stanley discovers something miraculous: fresh water flowing through a small stream, and wild onions growing nearby, the same onions that Sam used to sell in the town of Green Lake decades earlier. Stanley gives Zero water. Both boys eat the onions and begin recovering their strength, and then something incredible happens. While resting at the top of the mountain, Stanley unknowingly sings a song. It's a song that's been passed down through his family for generations. It's the same song that Ilya Yelnats once sang while carrying the pig up the mountain for Madame Zeroni. At that exact moment, the Yelnats family curse is finally broken. After spending the night on top of God's thumb, both boys recover their strength. The water and onions help them heal. Then Zero tells Stanley something he's been hiding the entire time. Zero was the one who stole Clyde Livingston's shoes. He took them from a shelter, thinking they were just normal sneakers. But when police started chasing him, he panicked and threw them off a bridge. Those same shoes accidentally landed on Stanley, leading to his arrest and his entire nightmare. Stanley should be angry. He should feel betrayed. But instead, he realizes something profound. All these events, the shoes, his arrest, Camp Green Lake, meeting Zero, they all happened for a reason. They were meant to bring them together. Meanwhile, back at Camp Green Lake, Stanley's lawyer arrives. New evidence proves Stanley is innocent. But the warden lies and claims Stanley ran away on his own. The lawyer becomes suspicious and warns the warden that she'll return with authorities if Stanley isn't found. Back on the mountain, Stanley keeps thinking about that golden tube, the one with the initials KB. He becomes convinced that it belonged to Kissin Kate Barlow, and if her lipstick tube was buried there, then her treasure chest must still be somewhere nearby. Stanley and Zero decide to return to Camp Green Lake one final time to search for the treasure. That night, they carefully make their way back across the desert. They arrive near the digging site and Stanley locates the exact hole where he found the lipstick tube. Both boys begin digging. After hours of digging, Stanley's shovel hits something solid. They uncover an old treasure chest buried beneath the dirt. But before they can escape with it, the warden, Mr. Sir, and Pendansky suddenly appear and surround the hole. And then something terrifying happens. Several yellow-spotted lizards begin crawling out of the dirt and into the hole with Stanley and Zero. These are deadly creatures. One bite and you're finished. The warden desperately wants the treasure, but nobody is willing to enter the hole because of the lizards. Stanley and Zero are forced to remain completely still while the lizards crawl all over them. The tension is absolutely unbearable. Every second feels like an eternity. One wrong move and they're dead. As the night passes, the warden grows increasingly frustrated. She reveals something personal. Her family has spent generations searching for Kate Barlow's treasure. Her grandfather failed to find it, and her grandfather forced her to dig holes around the desert her entire childhood, continuing this obsession. She's been searching her entire life for this treasure. Morning finally arrives, but surprisingly, the lizards still haven't bitten Stanley or Zero. Then Stanley's lawyer suddenly returns with police officers and government investigators. The warden quickly invents a story claiming Stanley and Zero stole the treasure chest from her cabin before escaping into the hole. But when the investigators examine the chest closely, they discover something crucial. Stanley Yelnat's name is written directly on it. The chest originally belonged to Stanley's great-grandfather before Kate Barlow stole it. The warden's claim falls apart immediately. At the same time, the investigators discover that Zero's records are completely missing. This raises massive red flags about how Camp Green Lake has been operating. Soon the truth about everything comes out. The authorities learn that Mr. Sir is actually a criminal using a fake identity. Pendansky isn't a real doctor. The camp has been operating illegally. The warden, Mr. Sir, and Pendansky are all arrested, and at that exact moment, something miraculous happens. Rain begins falling over Green Lake for the first time in decades. The boys remaining at the camp run outside celebrating as the dry desert begins flooding with water. After years of drought, Green Lake is returning to life. A few days later, Stanley returns home with the treasure chest. Together with his family and Zero, they open it. Inside, they find gold, jewelry, old documents that belong to Stanley's great-grandfather, and valuable stock certificates that have become worth a fortune over time. Overnight, Stanley's family becomes rich after generations of bad luck and struggle. Without hesitation, Stanley decides to share the treasure equally with Zero. They both earned it together. The Yelnats family agrees without hesitation and officially welcomes Zero into their home. Zero uses part of his share to hire investigators to search for his missing mother. After years of separation, the investigators finally locate her. Zero reunites with his mother. Stanley and Zero are now living comfortably as neighbors with their families. They remain close friends and continue spending time together. Stanley's father's invention becomes so successful that even Clyde Livingston, the baseball player connected to the stolen shoes, appears in commercials promoting the product. Everything connects together, every event, every character, every moment, it all matters. And that's the complete story of Holes, one of those movies that seems simple on the surface, but is actually filled with layers of meaning, interconnected stories, and incredible character development. What makes this movie truly special is how it weaves together past and present, showing how our family histories and our personal choices can affect not just our lives, but the lives of others around us. Stanley's choice to help Zero becomes more important than his own survival. The broken promise made by his ancestor generations earlier finally gets resolved through an act of genuine kindness and sacrifice. If you haven't watched this movie yet, I genuinely think you should. It's funny, it's heartwarming, it's suspenseful, and it has one of the most satisfying conclusions in cinema. It's the kind of movie that sticks with you long after the credits roll. But here's the thing. If you're still here watching this explanation, and you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I want to challenge you to do it right now. Don't just watch the explanation and move on. Subscribe. Join our community. We break down incredible movies like this every single week, and you don't want to miss what we have coming up next. Trust me, the content we're working on is going to blow your mind. And please, drop a comment below and tell me, what was your favorite moment from Holes? Was it when Stanley carried Zero up the mountain? Was it when the curse finally broke? Was it when the truth about the treasure was revealed? I want to hear from you. Your comments mean everything to us and help us create better content. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe.